Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Hey, it's Friday, so once again, it's time for a Foo-for-Off Friday or a Brouhaha Friday, as somebody suggested I could do. But, I don't know if I have enough stuff to complain about this week, so I'm going to tell you a story at the end. Stick around for Steve's story time. I'm going to tell you a fun story about a near miss in my life, but a lesson I learned from it. Just trust me on this one. But I did the great maple syrup taste-off not too long ago. And at the end of the video, I picked up the box of the toaster sticks, and there was one slab left, and they'd been frozen and rethawed a couple times, and I pointed out they're already a year old. So I said, I think I'm going to throw these away. And in response to the video, I got a note from somebody who says, Steve, why don't you donate that to a mother someplace who's got hungry children? Number one, I'd already thrown it away. So I wrote in response to that, I've got nothing against those kids. Why would I do that? And the commenter then said, are you trying to be funny? And I said, yes. The toaster sticks were a year old. There was one slab left. They'd been thawed and refrozen twice. And the last slab was out of the plastic. Who on earth would accept that as a donation and say, yes, thank you, we will eat this? I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So somehow there's this, once in a while, there's a communication missing there. I did the video about the boating issue in Michigan and whether or not the executive order issued by the governor explicitly bans the use of motors on boats. And I did a rather lengthy video, I thought, on that. And I thought I explained myself pretty well. And I had three different people. That's my new animation for the number 3. 3 different people. And I'm convinced this cannot be a coincidence. The first email I got said, Steve, during that video, you laugh at people who disagree with you, which is kind of difficult to do because I'm speaking to myself. So when I laugh, to interpret that one way or the other, I think is a bit of license on your part. But he goes, you laugh at people who disagree with you. He goes, I'm offended by that. And I'm a subscriber. And I'm going to unsubscribe from you unless you apologize and take the video down. So I thought, well, if I took the video down just because one person was upset with it, I wouldn't have a channel because I'd have no videos up. I've had somebody complain about every single video I've done. I'm pretty sure every video I've done has drawn at least one complaint from somebody. So I responded to that and I said, well, sorry to see you go. And about an hour later, I got an email from somebody else, worded differently, but basically, Steve, I watched your video. I'm a subscriber, and you laughing at people who disagree with you offends me. I'm going to unsubscribe now. To which I responded back, okay, goodbye. Sorry. And then I got a third one about an hour later and said, Steve, I'm a subscriber. You laugh at people who disagree with you. I'm offended by that. I'm going to unsubscribe unless you apologize and remove the video. And I thought, is there somebody out there giving lessons on like how to get people to remove videos off YouTube? Or why are they all doing this? I'm a subscriber. You've offended me with your laughter. I will unsubscribe unless you apologize and remove the video. Video's still there. I didn't apologize, sorry. Except for right there, I did. But the weird part about it is that a lot of people saw the title to the video and didn't understand the points of the video. It happens. And I've often said that, you really need to watch a whole video if you're going to complain. And I'd said that there was no blanket ban on boating with a motor in Michigan because if you read the executive order, it's not there. And I had a lot of people, probably about 100, maybe 200 people, send me the link to the DNR website that says that there's a ban on boating according to the executive order, but the executive order doesn't say that. So I said in the video, I'm aware of the fact that stuff's on the internet, but that's misinformation. And people keep sending to me. I know it's there. I mentioned it. Of course I know it's there. But I also had quite a few people who said, Steve, they're blocking the boat ramps. Yeah, that's different. I never said they weren't blocking the boat ramps. The blocking of the boat ramps or the closing of facilities by the state of Michigan is something that's explicitly allowed by the emergency powers of the governor. But that's different. I never said they weren't blocking the boat ramps. Blocking the boat ramps blocks everyone, not just motorized boats. It blocks canoers and kayakists. Kayakers? I guess kayakers. Well, I like kayakist also. So people who didn't bother to think things through all the way, though, might be now tempted to ask, well, Steve, there does appear to be a lot of miscommunication from Lansing on this. What should somebody do if you think that nothing's been done correctly yet? And I did the video a couple days ago about the guy who got a ticket whilst protesting an abortion clinic. And he got ticketed, and the ticket said, man was protesting despite executive order saying you can't be outside doing unnecessary things. And he took that to federal court, showed the ticket to a federal judge, and when the city of Detroit realized they were going to lose that one real fast, they entered into a consent agreement that they would stop enforcing that, and they'd dismiss the charges against this gentleman and let him go on his way. And so my question is, if somebody has gotten a ticket that says, reason for ticket, citation, using a boat with a motor on it in contravention of executive order. If someone's gotten that ticket, do the same thing the other guy did. Take it to federal court and go, ticket says this, executive order says this. Seems simple enough. Now, I had several people tell me that the state was issuing thousands of tickets. That phrase was, if I only showed you my email filled up with stuff. And I had people saying, Steve, they've written thousands of tickets for this. Thousands of tickets. I said to each of them, can you get me a copy of one ticket or the name of somebody who got one ticket or get me in touch with somebody who got one ticket? I want to see a ticket. One ticket that says boating with motorized boat in contravention, executive order. Okay? And what's funny is I've had people tell me, well, someone got a ticket on a boat, but it was for social distancing, which means they could have gotten the exact same ticket in a car or on a hovercraft or in a helicopter. So the question is, are they issuing thousands of tickets? And in reality, if you check the news reports, they said they've issued a handful of tickets to boaters. And they've issued quite a few warnings. But again, warnings aren't actionable. And the tickets being issued to boaters, do they say what? They say social distancing in the boat? Or do they say boating with a motor? That's the question. So if such a ticket exists, I'd love to see it. And if somebody has such a ticket, I would suggest they consider doing the thing that the guy with the abortion protest ticket did. But I'm just one guy. What can I tell you? Now, here's the funny story I'm going to tell you. And I was reminded of this recently. I mentioned a couple people. I've been reading the autobiography of Richard Blade, who's a disc jockey in Los Angeles, worked at KROQ for many, many years. That station right there. Now he's on Sirius XM. And he's a very, very well-known disc jockey. And I was reading his book, and he talks about how he became a disc jockey and so on. And it reminded me of my own career in radio. And I started in radio in the early 1980s. And I worked in Bad Axe, Saginaw, and Frankenmuth. And then somewhere along the line, speaking of Frankenmuth, somewhere along the line, I got out of radio because it was appearing to be kind of a dead-end job, and I was getting disillusioned with it, and I was doing different things. I was thinking about going back to school, but I wasn't quite sure, but I hadn't made that decision yet. And right around the spring of 1986, I was sitting at my job, kind of bored, flipping through the newspaper, and I saw a reference to a friend of mine, a guy I knew from years earlier, who is now a program director at a major rock and roll radio station in Detroit. And I had crossed paths with him and gotten to know him because he worked at another radio station that I had interned at, and it just so happened he lived in my neighborhood, and I'd bump into him from time to time at the local Perry Pharmacy on Adams Road. And so I saw a reference to him in the newspaper that he was now programming this other big rock and roll station in Detroit. So I thought, it's kind of funny. I have not seen him recently. And the last time I talked to him, I was about to go off to my first job in radio. And since then, I'd worked at 3 different radio stations. So I decided, just on a whim, I'd send the guy a note with a tape so he could hear what I sounded like as a disc jockey, because I'd not been a disc jockey when I met him previously. So I got the address of the radio station off of, I actually think I called him, and I sent a letter to him along with a tape and said, hey, remember me? I was an intern at this station, and I understand you're at this station now. I'm not in radio at this moment in time, but you know, something I had a lot of fun doing it, and I had very, very fond memories of working at the radio station that you were at when I was an intern. A couple days later, I got a phone call at my office, and he calls me, and he goes, hey, Steve, it's great to hear from you. He goes, I got a question for you. He goes, are you interested in possibly doing some weekend work here at this radio station? Now, this is a rock and roll station. It's a top 5 or top 10 station in Detroit, huge station. And they played rock and roll music, which is what I would have wanted to play at the time. And he said, would you be interested in doing like weekends or overnights maybe? I said, I'd love to. And he goes, well, come on in. When can you come in? And he goes, come on in. I want to talk to you. So I slapped together a resume as best I could on short notice. And I went in the next day and sat in the office with this guy. And I hadn't seen him in good 5 years, 6 years. Hadn't seen him in a while. And caught up. We were, talking and stuff. He no longer lived in the old neighborhood, but I still did. And we were just shooting the breeze and we were going through. And he goes, Steve, here's the deal. He goes, we have a parent corporation in New York City that oversees us, owns us, runs us. He goes, but I'm the program director. I can hire and fire people at will, but before I can hire somebody, he goes, I'm required to get a tape of them in our studio doing our liners and our our comments, calls, and so on. And I send that to New York. He goes, but they rubber stamp it. He goes, they've never turned down anybody before that I've wanted to hire. You're golden. He goes, but I need you to make that tape for me. And I go, okay. And he goes, we have a production studio here you can use. He goes, but right now during the day, it's tied up. He goes, so I need you to come back one of these nights. The production director is actually another guy I knew. And he goes, the production director is also the evening guy. So he's on the air from 7 till midnight, I think, or maybe 6 till 10. He's going to need to come in during his shift. He'll put you in the production studio, set you up. You make the tape, give him the tape. He'll put it in my box. I'll ship it to New York. This is long before the internet. And then they'll rubber stamp it. It'll come back here. And then I'll hire you. You'll be doing weekends here. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Because that means I could keep my job that's making me living money and do this in the weekends and possibly springboard this into a full-time job or something else. But that's, that's a big, big deal. So great. So he and I went and found the production director. And the guy goes, when can you come in? And they'll coordinate schedules. A couple days down the road, they go come in at like 6:30. So I come in, I meet the guy, brings me to this production studio. And it's space age. It's the coolest production studio I'd ever seen in my life. It was identical to their air studio, which was also nice. I could see it through the window. I'm like, oh my, I want to work here. I want to work here so bad. And I sit down, put the records on. We're playing 33s at the time, my friends. Put the records on, roll tape on a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and playing with the microphone and the board and all this stuff. And I cut. I forgot, but he said specifically, I need you to cut me like 6 or 7 breaks, and I had the liner cards and stuff, and so I'd say, the call letters, my name, the slogan, what band that was, what band this is, check this out, here's the weather, that kind of thing. So they can hear my voice as if I was on their radio station. And when I'm done, I take the tape, put it in a box, go over, wave to the guy, he sticks his head out the door, I hand him the thing, goes, great, you're all set to go. And I go home and I'm like, yes, I'm on the verge of being on the radio in a major market in America. And go home. I figure it's going to be a couple days because he's got to mail the tape to New York. And it's not high priority to get an approval for a weekend overnight guy. So they got to mail the tape and they're probably going to call him and blah, blah, blah. A few days goes by and one day I go into the office and I always buy the newspaper on the way into the office. Open the paper up. Radio station just got sold. The corporation in New York just sold the radio station to another corporation. Just like that. These things happen in radio. I'm reading the story, and down the very bottom, and it goes, and the program director, we reached him for comment, and he told us, I've already got another job lined up. I'm gone. And he's down in Florida. I didn't have the guy's home phone number. All I had was his office number, and he's already gone. And I remember just sitting in my office that day, just going, I sent him the tape on a whim. If I'd sent it in 2 weeks earlier, I would have gotten the job. I'd be on the air. And it turns out when the new owners took over, they didn't fire anybody for a while. And the weekenders and overnighters, as far as I could tell, were there. Like they just left them. 1 or 2 other people left. But the program director was out. And by the way, he's still in radio. He's still programming a station. I checked yesterday. And so he's doing very, very well. He's moved around a couple of times like everybody has in radio. But I remember the time actually thinking to myself, if I only sent that tape in 2 weeks earlier, I would have gotten the job. I'd be there right now. I'd be doing weekends at this radio station in Detroit, in the format I wanted to do back then. And I would have possibly reignited my radio career to the point where it may have turned into something. For years, I thought that. Until recently, when I was looking back on my life, which is something you do when you hit my age, and I realized that that was in April of 1986. April of 1986. And it was right around that time that I had a conversation with a friend of mine named John, who is an attorney. I went to high school with him. I've known him since 5th grade. John pulled me aside one day and goes, "What are you doing with your life? Why aren't you a lawyer? Why aren't you?" And I'm like, I hadn't even finished undergrad. And he goes, "Dude," he goes, "if anybody should be a lawyer, it should be you." He goes, I went to law school. I know students who weren't you, who were doing just fine. He goes, "You should be there." He goes, that would suit you so well. And that conversation with John set me on the path to become a lawyer. And I am now 99.99999% certain that if I'd gotten the job in April of 1986 to be a weekend overnight jock at that radio station, I never would have considered going to law school. Never. Now, what would have happened if I'd gone in that career path instead of the one I did? I would have wound up at the station for a while. And somewhere down the road, I might have gotten to do, overnights during the week. Midnight to 6. If I played my cards really, really well, I might have been able to do like 6 to midnight or something, or 10 to 2, late evening, early morning. But the point is that I know guys who were in radio back then, and very few of them still are. Now, my friend, the PD, the program director, still is. He still is. But so many guys I know were in radio, and they hung on too long, and they finally got out, and they're doing different stuff now. And many of them look at the last few years of their radio careers wasted because they were hanging on hoping that the market would recover or the industry would recover, and it didn't. It didn't. And so I look at that and go, wow, if I'd gotten a job in April of 86, I probably wouldn't have gone to law school, or if I did, I would have gone to law school much later. As it was, I graduated law school at the age of 29, which seemed kind of late to me, but I know people who graduated earlier than that. Got a head start, right? So the interesting thing here is I feel now old enough and mature enough to once in a while tell a story and hope people learn from it, okay? And so there's a lesson here. And the lesson is that if you asked me in April of 1986, "Steve, is that good or bad what just happened to you?" I would have said without question it was bad. It was something I missed. It was a lost opportunity, okay? And on a scale of, it was bad. It was bad. There's no question. Good, bad. It was bad. Now I look back and I go, I'm so glad it didn't happen. I'm so glad. It was good. It was good. So, hey, you never know how these things turn out, but I'm reasonably certain on that one. So I did not become a disc jockey in Detroit in April of 1986. Back then, I thought it was a bad thing. Right now, I'm convinced it was a good thing. So there's my story with the moral. I hope you enjoyed it. Questions or comments? Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. The question is not, who is going to let me? Rather, it's who is going to stop me.